If you're spending less than $20 a month for prescription drugs, great. If not, then our monthly fee RX service might be a good option for you. Check for yourself at monthlyfeerx.com. Well, the Brian's Beat quote of the day, since it's the beginning of Pride Month, I've sold my soul for freedom. It's lonely, but it's sweet. I've sold my soul for freedom. It's lonely, but it's sweet. That quote from singer-songwriter Melissa Etheridge. I wonder how many of us can say the same. How many of us are willing or have sold our soul for freedom? You know, we think about the forefathers and what they did in order to get us what is the United States of America. Yes, they put their lives on the line. They put their families on the line. Their property, everything that they had. The king was after them. I don't think we are there anymore. Now, I'm not going to sit here and try to push you to being that type of person because, quite frankly, as I look at what happens here in the Commonwealth, we'll talk about it. What's happening in cities and towns, and certainly nationwide. It does not seem that many of us are willing to sell our souls for freedom. To those like Melissa Etheridge, who states that she has. And I do wonder, as I sit here and talk to you today, I do wonder how far Melissa Etheridge has gone as far as selling her soul for freedom. But I'm not going to push that issue. To each their own. The Brian's Beat quote of the day from Melissa Etheridge. I've sold my soul for freedom. It's lonely, but it's sweet. Yeah. Whether you live in a tree, a motorhome, a boat, whatever the case may be, welcome to Brian's Beat Saturday morning. People are just now starting to putz around and go back and forth. I'm starting to see a crowd migrating over by the Stop and Shop in Fairhaven. And before I get into the meat of our stories, and believe me, we've got a huge, big government stories for you today. Let's see what our good friend Jim is doing over in Studio 6 and 7/8 with our update on Town Square Sunday.
Good morning, Brian. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jim Phillips, and here's what's happening this week on Town Square Sunday. Nonprofits always developing ideas for fundraisers. Gallery X on William Street in New Bedford is bringing back the Gong Show on June 8th to help raise money for the gallery's capital campaign. MC Sean Fitzgerald will join us with details. New Bedford's Fishing Heritage Center will have a busy month of June with everything from Something Fishy, a free summer camp for third graders, to the first of 3 dates for a public sail aboard the schooner Ernestina Morrissey. Programs manager Joe Ritter will have the rundown, and Lori Souza from the Meeting Street Schwartz School in Dartmouth will have details on their Endless Summer fundraiser on June 8th. So join us for Town Square Sunday, Sunday morning at 6 and 11 on 1420 WBSM and 99.5 FM.
Thank you very much, Jim. And we have coming up the Bitcoin Biz Barometer in just a little bit, but you know, this has been quite the busy week. Donald Trump conviction coming down. I mentioned it yesterday with Barry. I did not believe that there would be a conviction on all 34 counts, nor did I believe that it would happen as quickly as it did. I was going to ask the question today about, and basically this really only presents itself to folks that are voting for Donald Trump, because if you weren't voting for Donald Trump, it really would matter. But the question is, now that he has been convicted, I know he hasn't been sentenced. I know there's an appeals process. But now that he's been convicted, are you still going to vote for him? You know, I'm not voting for him no matter what. I'm not voting for Joe Biden no matter what. But I find interesting many of the people that served under the president in the White House or as a cabinet secretary have come out to really dog Donald Trump. Former Defense Secretary Mike Esper. This is what he says about Donald Trump. A threat to democracy. National Security Advisor, former National Security Advisor John Bolton declared him unfit to be president. Former Vice President Pence claims he's got profound differences, refuses to endorse. A former Trump aide, Sarah Matthews. This is what she says. The American people should listen to what these folks are saying, because it should be alarming that the people that Trump hired to work for him a first term are saying that he's unfit to serve for a second term. I'm not making this up. The Associated Press reported it. Think whatever you want about the Associated Press. But they went out and they asked these folks. And as clarification, you can see some of these quotes on YouTube. And there are others. So I do ask the question, if you are in the camp of Donald Trump, are you still there? Are you still voting for Donald Trump? And I would add this bit of a caveat. You do have more than Biden as your other choice, whether that choice is freedom, as the Libertarian candidate Chase Oliver says he will grant, or if it's more restrictive, like Cornel West and Jill Stein, or a popular name without a worm in his head, RFK Jr. So you do have choices. Many people believe that there's only two choices, this one or that one. If I don't vote for this one, then the other one might win. To me, that's a losing proposition. That's voting for the lesser of two evils. I don't even hear people saying the lesser of five evils or three evils, if you don't want to include the Libertarian and Jill Stein is green. I'm not quite sure what Cornel West is running as, and I'm not sure that he's going to be on every state ballot, but be that as it may. He's out there. He's got his neck out there. He's got money. He's fundraising. So, are you going to vote for Donald Trump still? Speaking of voting, couple of things. That report by the New Bedford City Solicitor that came out. Tim left it right here in the studio for me. I actually was able to get it online, but it's sitting right here. 39 pages. Sitting right here talking about New Bedford elections. On Tuesday, I believe it was, maybe it was Wednesday, I was downtown meeting with someone, and I was standing out on North 6th Street, right across from the Serta bus station. And who comes walking down the street but Manny DeBrito? And so I said hi to Manny. We've been friends for several years. And we had a brief conversation, and he scooted across the street to get into City Hall. This is before I knew that the report was out. But apparently it come out a little bit earlier, and I just didn't know about it. But I've heard people talking with Tim in particular, saying that Manny's been in office too long and that he needs to go. Do you really believe that? Time-wise now. Time-wise. 6 years. And it seems that many of the things that have been happening with elections have been going on for quite some time, predating Manny in the commissioner's chair. And, here's a damned if you do, damned if you don't type thing. And that is, we want government to watch how they spend money. And historically, the number of people that come out for these city elections has been relatively low. So there weren't as many people on the payroll for the November election, that primary, was it? Yes, that election, that primary election. I said November, but a couple of months ago, that election. And I guess this is a case where you're kind of caught with your pants down. You could have used that extra person. This probably doesn't come up if all the ballots are where they're supposed to be, but they weren't. At any rate, that's out there. Your thoughts, 508-996-0500. Good morning. You're first up on Brian's Beat.
Well, then, I must be the lucky one.
I guess you are. Hello,
Brian,
Lucky.
good to have you on, as always.
Thanks.
Brian, I'm going to ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, I'm going to ask you two questions, and I'll take my answers off here. Do you think the country's better or worse off than it was 4 years ago? And out of the five candidates, who do you think can pull it back together in any way, shape, or form? And that's of the five candidates that you just mentioned.
All right.
And,
So I'm going to ask you to. The first question was: Are we better off now than we were in, I guess, 2020? Is that how you're looking at it?
Correct.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate the questions. Bye. 508-996-0500. I do not think this country is better off today than it was in 2020. I don't think that the country was better off in 2020 than it was in 2016. I don't think the country was better off in 2016 than it was in 2012. I do not think the country was better off in any of the four electing years during this century. I would have to take you back to the 1980s, to when I think that Ronald Reagan, we were actually better off when Reagan was running for the second term in 84, and maybe better off, yes, I would say, and better off in 88. I think we start to go down that slope going back to the 1990s. So to answer the caller's question, I think that we as a nation, looking at us budget-wise, looking at numerous factors, education-wise. We were better off back then than we are today. And so I don't think this is a Trump thing anymore, any less than a Biden or an Obama or a Bush type of thing. I think you kind of have to look at the Clinton administration and take it from there. Many people like that administration. Okay, now, as I just stumbled through all of that, the question about do I think any of the 5 candidates can change this? No, I think we are on a spiral. I believe, I've stated this before, you're not hearing anything new. You might not like what I'm saying, but I think that this nation is on a spiral. We are not the gods of the world anymore. And I don't think that any of these 5 candidates are going to be able to just get in there and right the ship. Number one, that's a difficult job for any one person or one person's administration to do. You need to have a Congress that is willing to put the foot forward. And I think we have seen, whether you want to talk about the border issue, you want to talk about health care, whatever the case may be, education, Congress is not willing to do the work. Why? Because when there's chaos, they're on top. They get people to contribute to campaigns. People are turning around saying, we need our Congress to do this. We need our Congress to do that. And what are they doing? They're out to lunch and enjoying the meal and the cocktails. So no, I think Chase Oliver could make a dent, not much of a dent. I think Jill Stein, I think Cornel West, I think RFK Jr., Biden is already putting us in that same direction. I just think the others would put us in deeper doo-doo. I'm not going to put RFK Jr. in that category. And Donald Trump, well, look, at least a third of his cabinet and other folks have come out and denounced him. And quite frankly, I didn't think he was, well, look. You're going to think that he did a great job. He was going to put a wall up at the border. Yeah, that stuff, that's not the United States of America. And you're saying to yourself, well, something needs to be done. The correct thing needs to be done. And in my book, that is not a border wall. Because you put a border wall there, then you're going to have to do one up in Canada. How are you going to stop people along the ocean? Yeah, and then you're going to have more airdrops. There are people coming in all ways, shapes, or form. The big problem that we have when it deals with immigration is folks overstaying their visas. All right? People are overstaying their visas, and unless we can figure out how to handle that, then what's the sense in spending X billions of dollars to put up the erector set from California to the, I guess, Brownsville, Texas? 508-9960-500 is how you get on to the show today. But, the question is, now that Donald Trump has been found guilty, are you still going to vote for him? If you were going to vote for him in the first place. And speaking of voting, Dartmouth has town meeting coming up on Tuesday. I am a town meeting member. Article 23 of our warrant, our packet, is a proposed bylaw that would allow for accessory dwelling units. So in other words, if you want to build an in-law onto your property or adjacent to your property, it has to be on on your property. 1,000 square feet of habitable floor space, maximum of 2 bedrooms. And you would be able to do this without getting a special permit from the town. Now, I think Fairhaven had a similar ballot question not too long ago, or I'm not sure if it was a ballot or a town meeting question. But this is a town meeting question, and I am voting to allow it to happen without the red tape. And it's interesting. The planning director, her name is Christina O'Grady. She said in a statement, I believe it was in the Standard Times, she clarified that Article 23 has absolutely nothing to do with short-term rentals, such as properties that are used for Airbnb. And I just shook my head and I'm saying, who cares if somebody wants to take that additional 1,000 square feet and use it for an Airbnb? It's their property. Whether they're trying to make money or save money because they have an ailing parent or a child that wants to move back home because things are so expensive that they can't afford to live in an apartment that they really can't even find right now. Who cares if they do an Airbnb there or it's for a family member? But Christina O'Grady, the planning commissioner, director, whatever the proper name is, she wanted to clarify that this has nothing to do with people using their properties as an Airbnb. They pay the taxes. If they've got the space, let them do what they want to do. Again, I thought this was the United States of America. I could be wrong. The caller who called in a little while ago, this is part of what you were asking. Are we better off? Well, all the way around, you see things getting tighter and tighter, more restrictions. The more restrictions that we have, unless any of these 5 presidents can do something about the restrictions on the local, state, and federal level, things are not going to get better. 508-996-0500. One other thing. Town meeting in Dartmouth is also going to vote on whether or not to sell the building structure and adjacent property where the old police station sits. I will also vote to let that happen. Again, let somebody else develop the land, and then you can have people buy the property and they can contribute to the tax rolls. It is time now for the Bitcoin Biz Barometer as we measure the universal crypto marketplace. Bitcoin up almost $400, coming in this morning at $67,571. Ethereum, $3,782. That's up $39. Binance Coin is down 8, coming in at $602. Solana down $2 at $166. XRP down a penny. Dogecoin down a penny. Cardano back in the top 7 at 44 cents. And that's your Bitcoin Biz Barometer for today, June 1st, 2024. As always, I get my numbers from coinmarketcap.com. And for those that could afford to do it, last year, if you bought a whole Bitcoin, you paid $26,819 for it. And if you hodled, you'd be up almost $41,000 today. That ain't bad. If you bought that whole Bitcoin in May of 2022, you paid $30,467. You would be up more than $37,000. Yay, hooray for Bitcoin. And I'm predicting Bitcoin's going to get a little bit better. So, did you hear about this story? This one caught my attention. Like I said, you got to be kidding me. And then as I started reading the story, it really hit home. Came out of the Boston Globe. As chairman of two committees in the Massachusetts Senate, Democrat Mark Montigny of New Bedford earns $61,000 in leadership stipends, which bump up his annual pay to $162,000, more than double the base salary of state lawmakers. Well, you're saying, well, he's chairing a couple of committees. Here's one of the committees. The Senate Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs. So what do you think the Senate Committee on Intergovernmental Affairs does? That's what I thought. Here's the other one. Senate Committee on Steering and Policy. Now, wouldn't you love to be in one of the meetings for either of these, intergovernmental affairs or steering and policy? Wouldn't you love to know, as Chairman Montigny bangs the gavel, what they're talking about? I mean, after all, he gets a combined $61,000 in leadership stipends. So, what comes up at these meetings? Well, it's pretty hard to tell because, according to the Globe article, neither of Montigny's committees have held a single public hearing or considered a bill. When the Globe asked Senator Montigny about the panels, his comment was, and here's the quote, serve in an advisory capacity to enhance the overall policy work of the ABC. Lets us know what they want us to know in just a couple of minutes. Got time for a call, though. Hello.
Good morning, sir. How you doing?
Winging my wang.
Say again, I apologize.
I am winging my wang. How are you?
I'm doing good. The question was asked, are we better off today than we were 4 years ago?
Yes.
We have a problem in this country. George Carlin has a skit. I don't know if you're a George Carlin fan, but I'm a big fan of his.
I was.
He has a skit where he discusses the education system and how the education system in this country is set up in such a way that it makes you just smart enough to operate the machines. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we ask the question, are we better off today than we were 4 years ago under any president, Republican or Democrat, over the last 100 years? We give way too much credit to presidents when the economy is good, and we give way too much blame to presidents when the economy goes south. Reason being is he who controls the currency controls the nation. And a president or the Congress, neither one of them control the currency. Who controls the currency in this country?
Last I knew, the Fed.
Exactly. The Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, over the last 4 years, has done something that has not been seen before in raising interest rates at such an alarming rate